Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 22nd, 2011 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education Legislative Meeting. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn off all cell phones and pagers or put them on vibrate. Would everyone please rise so we can salute the flag? Thank you. As is our tradition and procedure before the legislative meeting, we like to recognize students and employees of the Pittsburgh Public School District. I'd like to ask board members to please come forward, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Susan Chersky.
Good evening. This evening we have one special honoree for the Distinguished Achievement Awards. To introduce our awardee, I will begin with a story. On the morning of Wednesday, November 16th, shots were fired in the Hill District area of the city near a school bus stop. As several elementary school students were waiting for their bus to school, all students began to panic. School crossing guard Diane Mosby leaned upon her 24 years of experience and quickly took control of the situation. Miss Mosby rushed to quickly calm the students and move them out of line of fire. Not one student was harmed in the crossfire that morning. Thank you, Miss Mosby, for your example of leadership and courage in a great time of need. This concludes our Distinguished Achievement Awards for this evening. I now want to invite Board President Sherry Hazuda up for brief remarks.
Dr. Allen, could you stay up here, please? Come on. Close it. Dr. Dara Ware Allen has represented District 2 on the Pittsburgh Board of Education since 2009. An alumnus of the Pittsburgh Public Schools, graduate of Pittsburgh Peary High School, Dr. Allen received her bachelor's degree from Spelman College, a Master's of Science in Education from Duquesne University, and a PhD in Workforce Education and Development from Penn State University, with an emphasis in training and human resources. Her dissertation focused on the relationship between career maturity and the retention of the first-year college students. Since her appointment, Dr. Allen has served as chair of the board's Education Committee. Additionally, she has been a member of the Marketing and Communications Committee. In these roles, Dr. Allen made certain that the initiatives and proposals of the district were conveyed to the community in a way that was open and transparent. She repeatedly challenged the district to use language in a way that was understandable for families. Dr. Allen's commitment to the life prospects of Pittsburgh youth is evident in her career of service. Dr. Allen has been the executive director of YouthWorks, Inc. since May 2004. YouthWorks, a nonprofit organization in the greater Pittsburgh region, provides life-changing career preparation for at-risk youth. Immediately prior to YouthWorks, Dr. Allen was the director of Penn State's Educational Opportunity Centers of Southwestern Pennsylvania, a federal program that helps low-income, potential first-generation college youth and adults begin or continue a program of post-secondary education. Dr. Allen views community service as critical to personal development. A sampling of her current and past participation on boards and steering committees include the Executive Committee of the Pittsburgh Public Schools High School Reform Task Force, the Allegheny County Jail Oversight Board, the Youth Policy Council of the Three Rivers Workforce Investment Board, and Three Rivers Connect Board of Directors. She is also a founding member of the Urban League Professional Development Pittsburgh chapter. In her spare time, she does have a son. In 2002, Dr. Allen was named one of the Pittsburgh's 40 Under 40, an award presented by Pittsburgh Magazine and Pittsburgh Urban Magnet Project to young professionals working to make a positive difference in the greater Pittsburgh region. Though she is ending her tenure as a member of the Board of Education, Dr. Allen's connection to the district will remain very much alive through her children, who are students in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. On behalf of the children and citizens of the Pittsburgh Public Schools, we extend to Dr. Dara Ware Allen our sincere gratitude for distinguished service to the children, the staff, the parents, and taxpayers of District 2 and the entire school district. Thank you. And we have a little gift.
Thank you very much. I wasn't expecting this. It has been a great privilege to serve in this role, and even in this my brief tenure, I've learned quite a lot, and I feel like I've learned more than I've been able to contribute. But I thank you for this opportunity to serve, and you haven't seen the last of me. I was involved in the community before this role, and I'll continue to be involved advocating for young people and children. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Allen,
Present.
Mr. Brentley. Here. Mrs. Scalese,
Here.
Mrs. Fink,
Here.
Mr. Eisler,
Present.
Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mrs. Shealy,
Here.
Mr. Sumter,
Present.
Mrs. Zuda,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Before we begin with the business at hand, I would just like to say that it has been my privilege and joy, this is on a personal level, to get to know you and to work with you. Dr. Allen has the strength of character to stand up to her convictions, but also the strength of character to be willing to bend and to work with other people, and that's very admirable. And we've been really lucky to work with you these past 2 years, so thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
No? Doctor, I just want to say the best wishes to you in the future. And you and I are two of three board members who are in a very unique club here. We have children in the district. And so it's a juggling act, and it's very, very difficult to do, and you were able to do that. And so I just wanted to wish the best to you in the future.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Allen, it's been a great joy to have gotten to know you. You came on this board so quickly, so unexpectedly, and you jumped right in as though you had been a board member for 10, 15 years. You fell right into place. You're such a wonderful, calm voice at a time when we have some unbelievable things that we have to do. But you've been very supportive. You've been very quick to act. You've always put your energy into it full force, and it is difficult when you have especially small children. So I give you a lot of credit, and I hope that you will not leave us, because your wisdom goes a long way. Thank you, and I'm always there for you too.
Dara, I got to know you first when we were on a collaborative journey to look at vocational education programs. And I really thought, bright young lady like this girl. And it was very nice to see you come on the board with us. You've really brought a unique perspective. I think you look at things from as many sides as you hear comments on, and I think you try to come to the decision that's going to do the most good for the most people. And I appreciate that. I think that you have a very calm and intelligent way of looking at things, and I'm going to miss you.
Dr. Allen, we can all say wonderful things about you as a person and what you do for this district, but it goes beyond you to your family, your mother and your dad. Your mother is an outstanding teacher. Your father has always been a huge supporter of public education at Pittsburgh Public Schools. When we got to know you was a matter of conjecture for me, because I think I've been in so many meetings with you in this city, and what you give beyond the school board and what, as you said, you will continue to give to the youth of this city is invaluable. To your professional life as an executive director of an organization serving children, to all the other boards that you serve on, you are a role model, and you will be missed.
Not much left to say, is there? You see how much brighter the room got? She's smiling. And it's always been that way. We're always going to be here for you because you're going to be here for us. Thank you, Dara.
Dr. Allen, it's been a pleasure serving with you. It seems that you were on the board before you were appointed to the board. We can thank Mayor Ravenstahl for that. And your appointment was historic, and it truly changed the complexion of this board. Keep up the good work. I know we'll see you around. I saw you in meetings before you came on the board, saw you in plenty of meetings on the board, and I'm sure we'll be meeting with you after this, but thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. It's been really fun working with you over the past couple of years, and I appreciate your voice, and I hope to continue to hear it. And I wish you the absolute best.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter, will you share our core commitments and beliefs, please?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. The Pittsburgh Board of Education, in its effort to improve its governance, to do the job that we're chartered to do, and that is to educate students within the city of Pittsburgh, to provide adequate facilities and raise funds for that operation. But we went through a process over the first several years that I came on the board of developing goals, beliefs, and commitments. We kept them in 5 categories: to be committed and believe and have as a goal the maximum academic achievement of each and every student within the Pittsburgh School District, to make sure that that was carried out in a safe and orderly learning environment for the students, for the employees, for parents, and all those who are involved with our schools. We must make sure that we effectively and efficiently provide the support for that operation. The key point that is coming to bear here recently, we're talking about the term of equity. We wanted to make sure that we had the equitable and efficient distribution of resources. And I say that again, equity. And it came up in our public hearing last night, that if we believe, if we are committed, and we carry out things in an equitable manner, we'll achieve fairness and also address needs where they're most needed. Last but not least, we want to improve parent and community engagement. We can't do this work alone. We need organizations, we need parents, we need community entities involved with this, and it shows that where there is parent engagement, achievement goes up. So sum total is we believe, we're committed, and we have as a goal those 5 elements, and we feel that that will improve, again, the governance of this board and translate into educating all of our students properly and preparing them for life's work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter.
I just wanted to add something on the recognition to Miss Diane. If you ever want to see magic, you need to go at the intersection where she works. It is a 5-way intersection, 1 guard. Also, I wanted to just say a special thank you to a Mr. Ricky Szymanski, who walks his daughter to the bus stop every morning. He's the one that shared the incident with me about Miss Diane. He said, the only thing the kids know is Miss Diane. And so I just wanted to say thank you for him for sharing with me and allowing me to share it with this board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Lane, I also realized I should have went down to your end if you wanted to make any comments. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Azuda. I did want to give my sincere thanks and appreciation to Dr. Dara Ware Allen, who has been a fabulous board member to work with. She's very thoughtful. She speaks her mind. She stands her ground. And I think those are all great qualities. I had the very interesting experience of being with Dr. Ware Allen when my sister was here to visit, and they realized they knew each other. And so we never connected that and figured out while she was at Spelman, my sister was the chaplain at Spelman. So, yeah, and they recognized each other, so that was pretty nice. But all the best to you, and I hope you do stay engaged with us. I think you have an important voice to bring to the table, and as Mr. Brentley said, as a parent of children, I think that matters, and also as a thoughtful and strong supporter of public education. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Let's get down to business now. Will you please, everyone please turn to the minutes from last month. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Mrs. Khaleesi.
On the second page, 2 of 3, under number 2, where it says celebration of harvest in place of Halloween, the last sentence, the resolution failed for lace of second. It should be lack of a second.
All right, thank you.
Any other? Hearing none, move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, turn the... In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting of October 26, 2011, the board met in executive session on November 16, 2011, immediately before this legislative meeting, to discuss various personnel matters that may include, but are not limited to, administrative vacancies and positions open and closed. Finally, at the executive session immediately before this legislative meeting, the board discussed student discipline cases that involved violations of various portions of the Code of Student Conduct. The board does not vote at executive session. We'll begin with the committee reports, and the first committee report on education that is before you, submitted by Dr. Allen, Chair, and her committee. If you would please turn to page 19 of 19 of the report. I'd like to give you the student suspension, transfer, and expulsion numbers for this month. 50 students suspended for 4 to 10 days. No students suspended for 4 to 10 days and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. 2 students expelled out of school for 11 days or more. 0 students expelled out of school for 11 days or more and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. Are there any questions or comments on the committee report on education that were not addressed at agenda review? Dr. Allen, we'll start with you.
For number 27, the district realignment plan, this is I know we've been talking about this since the first meeting in June it doesn't make it any easier to discuss it and eventually vote on it tonight. I do want to kind of recap, I think, some of the timeline from when this was first introduced to let people know that despite the what's being brought forth that will affect people's lives and will be difficult for a number of people to to deal with and adjust, we try to make the process as thoughtful as possible. And so even though we don't want to be faced with this decision, here's some of the criteria, and just reminder about the process. When Dr. Lane first submitted the criteria to us about school consolidations and school closures, we wanted to learn, I think, from the right sizing plan, some of the feedback we got in terms of decisions for what schools would be proposed for closure. And there were the first tier of criteria taken into consideration: achievement of students, enrollment of the school, facility conditions, and the cost of operations for the building. And then there were other secondary factors that also did weigh in regarding the racial distribution, equity, transportation, special programs, and regions. And this has been, these factors were considered when the schools were proposed that we're voting on tonight. I also want to make sure everyone's aware that we had a community process, lots of various community meetings, and community input that really did influence some of the proposals that we're actually voting on here tonight. And we even we actually even made additional adjustments, from other proposals. So it's gone through a number of iterations for what we have here today. And, one of those is Chartiers remaining open, and Langley being proposed from pre-K to 8 to an actual K to 8 school. I know this will be tough. I have a personal connection for Langley in particular. My organization provides services to the 9th grade students. There will be a school still in the area, and we're just trying to make, I think, the best decisions that we can with the circumstances that we have. And so that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Mr. Brentley?
Yes, I just had some clarifications on under proposals and grants number 2, the $1 million Heinz Endowment for the Early Childhood Program in the amount of $1 million. And it says its purpose of the business is to work with families who are over 3% greater levels of federal income and so on and so on. I just wanted to ask, is this plan that they're working on, is this at all to work with or to prepare for any type of charter school or voucher program?
No, Mr. Brentley. Because of the reduction in our accountability block grant, we actually have a lot of families who are no longer eligible or able to participate in our pre-K program. So we have a waiting list. And this was a way, although we have support for our families that are below the federal poverty level because of Head Start, families that are over the poverty level, we don't have enough funds to provide early childhood. So we're trying to see if there might be a way by which we could provide a fee-for-service model for them. But no, this is not related to any charter voucher proposal.
Okay, well, what is our relationship with the Homewood Children's Village? Are they a contractor or service provider for us? Or
well, actually, we have a memorandum of understanding with Homewood Children's Village, and they are providing some services at Westinghouse, as I'm sure you're aware, but they also are looking to provide services to children who either live or go to school in Homewood, which ultimately is to include medical services, dental, those kinds of things as well. So they're trying to kind of do wraparound support for kids that either go to school in Homewood or live in Homewood.
Okay. Uh, Have they, at this point, submitted or expressed any interest at all in submitting an application for a charter school in the Pittsburgh Public School District?
At this point, no, they have not.
Okay. Well, my next question is, Mr. Weiss, would that at all be any kind of conflict for an agency to be a service provider and then to submit an application? Or better, the better question would be, is there any language at all in our MOU with this agency concerning that?
There's no language in the MOU as far as a conflict or potential conflict. I really would have to defer any comment on that until we see if an application would be forthcoming next year and compare that to the MOU. So it's something we'll certainly look at, but at this point, I really can't say more than that until we would see something concrete. I would point out the deadline for application has passed, so we're not going to be dealing with any application like this year.
Okay. But on that issue, just to close that issue, it would be helpful if it was forthcoming or much more clear understanding if that is or was the intention of actually any organization who is working within our buildings and then eventually pull out and submit applications. It would be helpful to know that early on.
I don't disagree.
Thank you. My next question is page 3, number 4, the question on the Peterson Center. And I did get the response back from the administration. It is my understanding that the university is not willing to work out any kind of parking arrangements with the district on those 2 days, if I read it correctly.
I think there was a little more to it than that, but Dr. Tua, was there more to it than that? I think there was.
It will be an added cost on our part if we want to enter into that kind of relationship with them.
Okay. You know, I thought it was a great location, but there were some concerns about the parking and what they had to pay. And I would just encourage folks, it may be difficult this year, but that because we are, I believe, good customers, that they would hopefully meet us halfway or do something in support of us. Have we at all contacted the new Consol Energy Center for graduations, which would be an excellent location?
We can explore that next year, but what the school principals are doing is some of them are offering buses for the parents.
Okay, which would be an additional cost, but that's still a...
But that's from the school budget.
Okay, great. Yes.
And the other thing, well, we can certainly look at Consol, but a couple things. I'm sure the cost is breathtaking for Consol Energy, but the other thing I think that we need to remember, that is the Penguins' place, and that was the reason we ended up with commencement on Father's Day, because of the possibility of the Penguins being in the playoffs. And so if we have our date where we like it, we can't use Consol. So we'd be back in that same space again.
Okay. Well, it'd be great for just an opportunity to kind of look into. For number 27, Doctor, the district realignment plan, I have major concerns with it, and I'm obviously not alone based upon the response to the public hearing last night. I can tell you that I have major concerns about number J from the beginning as well as what's presented, but I am willing to work with the two communities for the recommendations for the Perry Oliver, I believe. But secondly, I still want to express my concerns about quite a few of them, but the one that I really want to focus on that I think makes really no sense is the Northview Heights closing. Somewhere we have to find a way to remind poor students, primarily African American students, that they should be treated fairly. To take Northview out of its community, put them on a bus to keep someone else's building open is not a good thing. The Northview is a great building. A lot of remodeling was completed there, and it just simply makes no sense to now close the building up. And so I would encourage my colleagues not to support that, along with some others, but I understand when it's not in your backyard, that there's no need to stand up and support poor folks. So I don't support that one, Doctor, and I am actually going to be only supporting Jay on the realignment plan. On 17, page 17, number 29, and there are several. There's several amendments here. No, I think it's the other ones with the Westinghouse. All the amendments, and I have major concerns with that as well. And then number 31, the elimination of the costume courses at Kappa. We've heard from Kappa loud and clear. Have there been any other changes, or everything presented to us is still presented for consideration for today, Doctor?
I think, I'm not sure I understand your question, but
We have not made any recommendations for any changes.
oh, are there other recommendations for changes at Kappa specifically?
Yes. This item is still before us as is, and that is the elimination of the costume course at Kappa.
Correct.
Okay. 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 Well, I am, concerned about that. I shared my concerns. Just say it once again, it is a school that's working. I think one of the comments that really stuck out at the meeting there was someone made the comment of engaging them, holding for a moment and engaging the community to come up with some alternatives in terms of making things work. And I think I've been saying that for the longest, and I'm going to ask that the administration consider that again. And I really think most of these items coming before us today could really benefit if we would consider holding and then engaging the community to help us to resolve some of these issues. When we do things the way we're doing here, in my opinion, which is quick and kind of a knee-jerk reaction, things happen. And so it will be a very, very difficult thing for me to support. I will continue to ask the administration to listen to the community, invite the community, engage the community. 6 people, 9 board members at this end does not have the answers for all of the issues in this district. And so we have to find a way to open up and to engage others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Khaleesi. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in general, I think what I'd like to state is that this realignment plan has come forward to us back in July, I would say, and it has been through the process the staff generally does do, which is explore, talking to the public, exploring different options, listening to recommendations from the public, and even taking those recommendations at times when it is the better way to go. But we'll be supporting this with the exception of one item in here, and that is the welding program. However, I'd like to make clear that in the feeder pattern changes for Minadeo and Greenfield, which I was very involved with, again, I'd like to thank staff for coming out and supporting me and helping me and the public figure out a way to work that out. I also want to remind everybody that when we do things like this and we have to make the cuts that we do, our job is not easy. It's generally the one that has to make that last decision that upsets everybody. But we don't do it for any negative reason. We do it because it's what we have to do and what we have to do to be equitable throughout the district. With Greenfield and Minadeo, the feeder pattern changes went through a process talking to the public several times. We had several meetings, and I know that not everybody is happy, although we have said over and over again that when we do things of this sort, we do go back and reevaluate, and if there's anything that we need to tweak, I'm sure the staff will do that. So in all of these things that we do, we don't just do and then drop the ball. We do follow through. We do make sure that everything is in place, and if it doesn't work for whatever reason, staff does address things at that time as well. So with that being said, and then on number 30, which is the RHVAC program and the welding program, my concern is not necessarily that we're ending a program, but my concern is that we need to be very clear of what CTE programs that we are going to invest in, and how we invest in them. And if we have a program that we find then that is lacking, is lost, whatever it needs to continue, whether it's the certification isn't being taken advantage of or whatever, it is important to me to know that the staff is going to seriously look at each and every program and evaluate them in more than just, is a student getting certification, but what is that student getting, and what are we doing to make sure that these students at least have an option outside of just college, or what other things are all in life. I think I expressed that to you, Dr. Lane, and I think you were very responsive when you understood where I was going. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fink? Mr. Eisler?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I want to comment on three, and there are more in this book, but three things where I think the community has really stepped up to assist this district in very, very tough financial times. All three of them directly affect services to children. That is the Heinz Endowments for their willingness to come forward to help us continue the excellent early childhood program that has been developed. And again, I quote our superintendent that high school reform begins in pre-K. This is a very, very significant grant, and one that is really going to benefit this district. The Western Pennsylvania Food Bank has stepped up to really help children. I don't know how anybody who is hungry can attempt to even begin to learn. And the third, and in a very, very important one, is the August Wilson Center with a memo of understanding, a memo of agreement that is in here for the arts program. I know how hard the staff is working to continue to achieve excellence in very, very difficult financial times, and I don't think it's going to pass overnight either. I think that these are examples of what the community can do and what the community should do on behalf of the children, and especially thinking about the future of this country and having a well-educated citizenry. In terms of 27 with a district alignment plan, again, to Dr. Lane and to all those members of her staff who have been working on this, as Mrs. Khaleesi pointed out, since July. This is never an easy process, but again, the times dictate that we do take action. I think it is very important that we are heading into another fiscal year beginning January 1st without a tax increase. I have been assured by Dr. Lane's explanation, and I think Dr. Allen spelled it out early in her comments, that what we want to do by the realignment is really strengthen the educational program for the children who are being most directly affected, and Dr. Lane has assured us of that. So again, Dr. Lane, to you and your staff, thank you for this. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. Mr. McCray?
Thank you. Just a quick comment on number 27. This has been a very painful process, and I represent some of the people that are in the most pain. Like we said, the community has been involved. We try to keep the community involved, but let's keep the community involved going forward and invest in the West, because they do need, they deserve and they need a lot more attention than they've been getting, and not just from this board, from the city council and everybody else as well. And I agree with Mrs. Khaleesi on item number 30, and I think we need to keep more building trades in our schools, and that's why I can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I would venture to say that there are probably more important decisions made at this table than anywhere else in Western Pennsylvania or the city of Pittsburgh or whatever. Having gone through this before with school closings, layoffs, furloughs, school closings, realignments, we need to take this very serious, because we're charting the path for the future of the city of Pittsburgh. And just to know that you get 9 people together, like a jury, or 9 people together that can collectively work at it, but I think we all have our individual talents to contribute to the conversation. It's been a healthy one. And some of the things that we've heard that I hope as we move forward is the issue of equity. Not equality, equity. Equity means where there is the most need, that need gets addressed. We heard that in the public hearing last evening, and we're going to hear it more. And as I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, that's part of our core beliefs, commitments, and goals to make sure that we do things in an equitable manner within this district. Some general comments or specific comments on number 27, the district realignment plan. Item A is talking about the Board of Education of the School District of Pittsburgh authorize the closure of the school program at Pittsburgh for Pitt Pre-K effective June 30th, 2012, and the reassignment of students. It's a good building, and we need to find the conversation to see if we can reuse that building in some productive manner. I've always been the proponent that you need to keep the best facilities for the long term of the school district. For the sustainability of the district, you need to keep the best buildings online. And Fort Pitt is a good building, and it is better than some of the buildings that are still online within the district, and specifically a building that's relatively close to that. So that conversation, I said, it should continue. I remember the same comments came up when we were closing schools back in 2006, and we talked about the feasibility of the reuse of the Margaret Malines building, and that building is back online and being used productively. So I say that to keep that note of that and not lose sight of that concern. Also, there are a number of feeder pattern changes within this realignment. It's good to know where kids are assigned. It's good to know what the feeder patterns are, but it also is important to know where the kids are actually going. Last evening at the public hearing, we heard a lot of Colfax parents talking about how their children were going from Colfax to Kappa. Now, that's not a feeder pattern assignment, but that's a choice that we need to take note of and understand the choices that parents are making within the district. We can, on paper, make it look right by saying these are the feeder patterns and these are where kids are supposed to go, but unless we actually know that, that would help, and that's been requested to have that information plotted on a map or plotted graphically so we can better understand that dynamic. Also, item L is talking about the Board of Education of the School District of Pittsburgh authorizes the move of the McCleary Early Childhood Center to Pittsburgh Arsenal Pre-K. It's at some point in time, I would hope that we could graphically see on a map where our early childhood centers are and how they're serving the district. When we talked about moving McCleary a year ago, folks were complaining about it. We're talking about moving Chartiers, but that's not moving. But sometimes we need to just take into account the cost and benefits of moving. Not that I'm speaking against that one, but in particular, folks that are there are talking about how it's a beautiful building, you got playgrounds, you have all this, the amenities around that, and what impact that would have on parents getting to the centers. In general, the policy of the Public Housing Authority within the city of Pittsburgh has greatly affected poor and low-income students within this district in various areas, and because of such has caused schools to close or caused recommendations to come before this board to close schools in those areas. But I would just say to keep in mind that if we promise to do right by the students, then such that the students take advantage of the promise, and maybe we might see or might not see within the next several years the effect of having the Pittsburgh promise, of having met AYP several years, of having achievement gaps eliminated, of having improvement within the district. Folks might come flocking back to the city if gas prices go up high enough and folks are tired of being in the hinterlands and can't walk to amenities. That's some of the things that urban living affords individuals, being able to walk to shopping, being able to walk to education and cultural facilities, such that we need to know what schools that we're going to keep mothballed as such for the potential regeneration of particular communities. We need to keep in mind that folks are getting beamed up at this time, and
Yeah.
we must continue. But let's always keep in mind the big picture, not this community, this community, this community one at a time, but the big picture of, do we have enough facilities ready in case the population increase or when the population goes back up? Are we keeping the best facilities online? Are we making sure that equity is throughout the district? Because some people were complaining about what was taken away from them, and some folks were saying that they never had it in the first place. So let's understand what our mission is and that term equity, to make sure that all the children get the benefit of what we can do for them based on the resources we have to provide for them. So in the case of the closing of Northview, in the case of the closing of Fort Pitt, it's something that I regret. However, those communities may turn around, and we need to keep that in mind, and to make sure that the burden doesn't just fall on particular segments of our school population, that only certain children wind up being bused, or only certain child care centers are located in certain areas, or that the burden is shared throughout the district in an equitable manner, not in a punitive or harmful manner. That happens when you look at it from the big picture and not just look at it neighborhood by neighborhood or community by community. Those are just some of the comments that I wanted to make in terms of, in general, how it relates to, but specifically Fort Pitt and Northview, as far as the potential reuse of those buildings if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shealy.
Thank you. Excuse me. Just on item 31, Dr. Lane, the elimination of the costuming program at Kappa, what happens to those 9 children?
Yeah. The children will be part of the visual arts program, and I probably should point out that in the case of the actual specific reductions that were discussed last evening and with you prior, they did undergo some changes based on discussion with the school. However, in answer to the specific question you're answering or asking me, is these students are dual enrolled and they'll be in visual arts.
I'm sorry, so all of them are already dual enrolled students?
Correct.
Okay, okay. So, and thank you for that. That makes me feel better, because I think to Mr. Sumter's point about equity, I was mildly concerned that they would just have nothing and be pushed out of Kappa next year or sent to the Four Winds. But while I'm here on equity, I might as well put my plug in for third graders who are currently taking instrumental music programs and the continuity of programming for them, because that's what I was looking at, is a continuity of program for these 9 students. And so as we move forward, any consideration that could be given to current third graders in instrumental music programs being able to continue those programs into 4th grade, I think would be a more equitable situation for those specific students than the hard stop that I think I heard at Education Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In an effort to be fiscally responsible, we have looked at our CTE program to align it with the Pennsylvania State Department, PDE, to look at jobs that are going to be in existence in the next 10 years. And I think the intent is good that we do that, because we do need to be fiscally responsible, because that's how we get reimbursed. But I think when the state is looking at the entire state, They're not looking at the city of Pittsburgh, and we know in Pittsburgh we do have strong construction unions. And this year we've seen Ms. Mike has put together several partnerships with different trade organizations that have been beneficial to our children. But I'm still concerned with the reduction in building trades being taught in our district for our children. We know there are jobs out there for them. Since we have put CTE as a priority again for 2012 as an effort to get it right, I would hate to see us make a move on this and then decide halfway down the road that this isn't, like, we're going to be willing to pay for this to educate these kids without getting reimbursement from the state. And that's not to say, I mean, you could always close it next year. This savings is not, to me, the savings of closing it this year is not significant enough to do it while we're still reviewing the program and making decisions. So I will be voting no on number 30. Thank you. Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call vote, please?
May take a little time here. I have some assistant scorers with me tonight, so you have to bear with us. Dr. Allen.
Yes on the report as a whole, abstain on item 3.
Mr. Brentley.
Yes on the report. I'll be voting no on number 27, but yes on J of 27. I'll be voting no on 28. I'll be voting no on 29, and I'll be voting no on 31.
Mr. Scalise.
Yes on the report as a whole. I'll be voting no on number 30.
Mrs. Fink.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 30, page 17.
Mr. Eisner.
Yes.
Mr. McCray.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item number 30.
Ms. Shealy.
Yes.
Mr. Sumter.
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda.
Yes on the report on the whole, no on number 30.
Okay, as I review this, it appears all items have passed. Item 30 has 4 no votes and has 5 yes votes, so the report's approved. Thank you. Pardon? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We'll now move on to the Committee on Business and Finance, submitted by Mr. McCray, Chair, and his committee. Before we begin discussion on the report, Mr. Camarda would like to make clarification on 2 business items.
Just to clarify for you, on page 4 of 6, items B7 and B8, they both should say annually. I apologize for that.
Tell us where to go and tell us a little slower.
On page 4 of 6, items B7 and B8, I believe the B7 has the word annually in it, but just for the record, it was not there at agenda review, and I missed having it show up in B8. No, no, I'm not. I'm in. If you go to business, it's the 4th page in, page 4 of 6. B7 and B8. Oh, it's just at 7. 7 and 8. The items are for the COBRA. Is number 7. UPMC benefit management services is number 8, and the word annually was to be in both of them.
Excuse me, Mr. Camarda, annually after the amount.
After the amount, yes.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Camarda. Are there any questions or comments that were not addressed at agenda review? Dr. Allen.
Yes, for item C, C1 and 2, regarding the recommendation to authorize the school district to award the bid for the sale of the Rising Science School property, and then number 2 for the sale of the Ridge Avenue School property. I struggle with this one, but I will not be able to support these 2 items based on the process. I have expressed this early on when I saw what the timeline was for submissions, and I think that our process was not reasonable to expect people to be able to respond. A 3-week window was what we had for these 2 buildings. And we may end up with, we could have ended up even with the same bids that are coming forward, but I think it would have given more opportunity for the community to be able to have their voices heard in the process about what the plans are, or to be able to adequately respond to the RFP when it came out. I think that we should reject the bids, open up the process to extend it for a little bit longer for more people to be able to have the opportunity to weigh in. And then we could still even have a sale within 2012 where we would be able to recoup the funding from the sale of these 2 buildings. It does not have any, my opinion doesn't have anything to do with the bids that have come forth from the individual firm for number 1, and then nonprofit for number 2. But I think it's more of a larger commitment to, I think, the community who has these public assets within their community be able to weigh in within a reasonable time period. We approved it in August, and I think we should have quickly gotten out the RFP to provide the time that we needed for our deadline that would have allowed us to be able to get that input. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley?
Yes, I have some major concerns for B3, 4, 5, and 6. B3 is, these are all contracts, communications and marketing. One is nearly $27,000. The second one is for $210,000. The third one is $105,000, and I believe there's another $105,000. If you add those up, we are close to the $500,000 that CAPA requested from us last night. This, and Dr. Lane, I've shared this many times, this is a perfect example of duplication of services, out of control spending, and just a total disrespect for the taxpayers. If we have an entire communications department, why are we spending nearly $500,000 for consultants? And remember, some of these, if you read throughout the description here, some have an automatic renewal of 2, maybe 3 years. This is an abuse of public dollars. I will not be supporting it, and I hope my colleagues would join me. We've heard loud and clear from the public last night, you cannot continue to spend this kind of money. You cannot contend to spend this kind of money without putting a call to duty, so to speak, out there in the district. How many of our employees would jump at the opportunity of providing some of the services that these consultants are using? Even though the language is somewhat misleading, the language suggests on call or up to an amount, which really means nothing. Because if you look in the past, those figures, they've always managed to spend up to the amount, if not exceeding the amount. And so it is a great opportunity for great money, for great work if you can get it. But it only is a handful of individuals who can get it. So I will not be supporting that. And I'm going to encourage you, Dr. Lane, to please do not submit anything like this when we're going through the hard times that we're going through. Last year, there was another consultant, Veritas or Veracast Company, I believe, walked away with another $150,000 or $200,000, and no one questioned it. And we're spending. We are now increasing our class sizes, but we can give out these contracts. And so it makes no sense. It is a duplication of service. It is something that really, I think we should now wave a white flag to, as to the amount of money, how it's being spent, what kind of budget are we giving communications and marketing, and why not find a way to redirect those dollars where they're serving our students. The second one is on C1. This is the public giveaway of a valuable asset, and I believe we're referring to the Reisenstein School. Regardless of the amount that's listed, $5.4 million, if you subtract the debt, I believe, or what was shared to me, that actually we would be getting about $1.1 million. And somebody, Mr. Weiss, could you clarify me if I'm making a mistake on my math here?
Well, your math is correct, but the bottom line is, if the board approves it, the district will receive the bid amount and is required by federal law to apply the proceeds first to the existing debt on the building. So let's be clear that the amount of the sale is around $5.5 million. It's not $1.1 million. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Brentley. Your math's correct, but I don't believe the impression should be left that the district is receiving $1.1 million. It's receiving $5.5 million if it's approved. The debt on the building will be defeased, which means it'll be paid, and the difference will be used by the district for either capital projects or other debt service per the school code.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. The question is still a question that we have to be able to wrestle with and be able to live with ourselves with this, in my words, with this giveaway. Regardless of what is offered, that money is going right to pay off the debt. So by law, that's fine. You can say by law. And so in actuality, we are getting 1.1 for this campus, this newer building. This building, just 4 years ago, previous administration put $8 to $10 million, and they had the bright idea of taking a middle school and we're going to convert it into a high school, and no one challenged that. Here we are 4 years later. Not only are we going to give it away, but it is my understanding that the potential buyer is going to actually demolish it. This is a great story for someone to watch abuse of public dollars. We can stop that. We should stop it. I don't support selling the building, period. But if we had to, we can clearly put a dollar figure on that would wipe out half of this deficit, bring those folks back to work, put those CAPA teachers back where they need to be, get all of those employees back that were contributing to this great school district. We have to be smart in how we deal with business here. We're not doing it here. It is unfortunate that this is even coming before us. And the final note, out of all of the experimental programs that the previous administration put on, most of it was targeting the East End. We have problems going on at Westinghouse, problems with a lot of the East End schools. This is the last building that they could actually use in terms of probably consolidating 2, maybe 3 of those schools in that newer building. I am also told that this building is, and I don't really give as much credit to so-called gangs or territorial, but they consider the location of that building as central, as safe, as no one's territory. So any and everyone can go freely there. And so we're missing that opportunity as well. And so I'm asking my colleagues that not only should we vote it down, but we should do it unanimously and send a clear message that if we're going to sell any of our assets. We're going to have to ask some of our partners to come to the table with a little bit more and to support us. I will not be supporting that. And the second one is C2. C2 is the sale of Ridge Avenue. Representing that community, I had asked before, and I'm going to ask and actually put a motion on the floor, that this bid should be rejected. And I am asking once again, for those who aren't familiar with it, it is a building that's located on the campus of Community College. Former Superintendent Dr. John Thompson had a wonderful program with a school to college program, and I wanted to look into the possibilities of creating that same program for our students to benefit of having a building on the campus. If not, at least to get in some conversation with Community College about whatever program they want to put in there. We create a memorandum of understanding. If there are 15 jobs, well, let's 3 of them be trainee or leaders in transition or leaders in training for Pittsburgh Public School seniors. Let us have a direct line into getting our students trained and possibly into the workforce. So I will, at the appropriate time, make a motion that not only it be rejected, that I would be appointed as the chair of the Ridge Avenue project, which is nothing more but an ad hoc committee to look into the highest and best use for the building, starting with a conversation with the folks at Community College. Mr. Weiss, can you tell me, would it be appropriate for me to do it here, or should I wait until we go around the table? Or Madam Chair, I don't know who.
I would suggest that the members comment, and then we can determine what we're going to do at that point.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll withhold.
I would. Sorry. Quite honestly, I would have preferred that if you were going to make a motion, you would have done it at this point in time, so it could be over and done with before we continued on, but I totally respect that. But I guess what I do want to say is that there are buildings here that are being sold, and we are obligated by law to pay off our debts in those buildings whenever we sell them. Collectively as a board, we discussed the process. We did make it a short time period. However, we did get some wonderful responses from them, and obviously some are coming forward. Holding on to buildings for a long period of time, I've been on this board for 10 years, and Ridge Avenue has been discussion for those 10 years. The building isn't getting any younger, it's getting older. That goes for all of the other buildings we have. It'll just be more of a cost on us sitting on these buildings longer and longer. So I'm very supportive of selling them because I'd like to put at least some of these buildings back on the tax rolls. I realize Ridge is not going to be one of them, but it serves a purpose in our city just the same with what the option is to use the building for. But I guess that one of the things I'd like to say, and very briefly, Madam Chair, is that I find it very difficult at times to sit on this board and hear information being given out as though it were fact when it is not. It is very frustrating to me when I hear hundreds of thousands of dollars that this board spends on things that this board has not spent. When I hear about $500,000 in contracts of communications and marketing, for example, and then we're demanding the communications and marketing send out some sort of a flyer. Well, I mean, you need one to do others. The communication and marketing department is not that big, and I'm not trying to defend a department or not. I'm trying to make clear to the public that information that is sometimes said at this table is not factual. It's very easy to get information. We are very open to the public. We have a lot of information on the web. An up to amount or a not to exceed amount generally just puts a top on something, and I'm not sure that we've ever really spent that kind of money. But it is there in case of any needs. And the schools do use these contracts. They tap into it constantly. That's why they're there. So I just would like to remind my colleagues that when they're stating numbers or statements, they should be very clear on if they are actual factual statements and not just claiming that this is this or that was that. It's just very, very frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Can I just have clarification, Mr. Camarda, on 4, 5, and 6? Are these 4-year contracts? Is the amount to be spent over 4 years? I mean, the way it's written, that's the way it looks. Does it say that? It doesn't. But we're voting on this. So we're voting on something from, again, maybe Mr. Weiss, you have to look at this. The way I read this, the operating period shall be from November 23rd, 2011, November 30th, 2015. The total contract amount shall not exceed $105,000. That seems to me to be a 4-year contract for that amount.
That's correct.
Okay, then I was right in my reading of it. Thank you. I think the comments of some of my colleagues in terms of use of buildings is very, very critical. I mean, we are limited by the Commonwealth. I say this time and time again. We're limited in terms of our role as school board members by the Commonwealth and the school code. I, however, do really feel strongly, and it is not about a usage issue at all, but I would like to see as much return to the tax roll as possible. I would also like to point out to my colleagues is when we reduce the debt on a building, we have a double hit. Number one, we are not paying any debt service, which is something that Mrs. Fink and I have been, in my 12 years and her 30-some, it's something that we talk about all the time because it does drive us all up the wall. And the second thing is we're not paying any ongoing maintenance to maintain the building at 45 or 50 degrees, which is what services do. So I just think we need to be aware of that, but I do believe in the fact that we ought to try to get as many of these back onto the tax rolls as possible. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. Mr. McCray.
Just a quick thought about the sale of the buildings. I've been on this board for 10 years, along with Ms. Scalise, and we've had a lot of buildings that we've vacated, we tried to sell, and then we stopped the sale, and we started the sale, and we stopped the sale. We get some good, solid deals going. It's going to reduce our long-term debt by paying off the short-term debt. So I say let's move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. These are the meetings we live for. The items 4, 5, and 6, those are all the consulting contracts dealing with marketing and communications. My preference would be that if these were to move forward, it would be 1-year contracts with 1-year options only, and that they would be approved on a year-to-year basis, not 4-year contracts or not 1-year contracts with 3-year option agreements. On the sale of the buildings, there's been comment about the process from this table and from people in the community. I think the learning experience for this board is to better inform the community of its role when we do decide to sell a building, to let them know the time frames for the public hearings and what we would expect from the community to be said at those public hearings, to invite the community to visit the buildings, to consider proposals for the buildings. However, the time frame set up in this last round, I don't know that would give anybody adequate time from the start of when they were advertised for bid to this point in time to come together with a proper bid for some folks. For others who have been sitting back waiting in the wings, maybe they have all their ducks lined up and are ready to move. The deals that have been put forward to us, I think we need to look at from the standpoint Yes, it may have been a short process, perhaps it may be different, but to look at the cost and benefits of those deals. What benefit would the district derive from the sale of a school? Would it benefit the district on the tax rolls? Would it benefit the district with helping to repopulate some of the schools? Would it benefit the district or the city in terms of jobs? Would it benefit the district in terms of development in areas that need it? Or are our buildings standing in the way of progress in certain areas? And you could look at, finally, the old Fifth Avenue High School is being developed. And it's been sitting there for some time, but now it's going to be developed. And if you look at patterns of development, once Consol Energy, the arena, the lawyer offices coming up Fifth Avenue, the development coming up Fifth Avenue, so it's logical that it would develop. The Larmer Avenue building is still sitting there vacant from what it was sold many, many moons ago. But with the revitalization of East Liberty, there's potential there that could happen. And you see how things are locating in East Liberty. Some folks are old enough to remember what East Liberty was 30, 40, 50 years ago, that it was second to downtown as being a central business district and had all the amenities that a business district would have in it. It would be second to downtown. But because of the automobile, because of television, and because of the development of the outer lying areas around the city, things like that just don't happen. Cities were created for the exchange of goods and services, and things happen in a natural manner. If we can contribute to that development in a beneficial way that benefits the school district, benefits the city, benefits the community, we should take that to heart. If it's just a matter of trying to unload and get rid of and we don't care what happens, that's another issue. So the concern that certain folks have mentioned about having the opportunity to discuss what's going to happen with a building before the bid is accepted, and what process there has not been a process laid out for the community. So they don't know, we don't know. We don't know what to expect, they don't know what to expect. They go up for bid, and the lucky bidder gets it, and then we react afterwards with a community meeting, hoping that the community will accept or mitigate any concerns or problems and make the project amenable to what they would want. But they're settled with that project. So now I'm hearing that we want to have some ideas or lay out some guidelines or some guidance for what we would want to accept in certain communities before bids are accepted or voted on. So again, this process of going through this bidding process is a learning experience, such that whatever buildings are left after tonight, we better know how to market those buildings and what type of process would be expected and the role the community can play in marketing those buildings going forward. We can't move backwards and redo what's done already. It could happen, but I think that may be more detrimental to the district in the long run than in the times that we're having right now regarding the financial crisis, regarding the achievement crisis, regarding the population within the school district, et cetera, et cetera. It's almost like the imperfect storm instead of being the perfect storm, such that, again, hard decisions are made at this table, important decisions are made at this table that have far-reaching impact for the city and the school district, and like I say, we need to take that to heart. But in some cases, for at least the one property, I think the benefits far outweigh the cost. Any money that comes to the district is income to the district. How we use it should not negate the value of that. there were decisions that we made before, hard decisions regarding if you have to relocate a high school, if you have to move that population to another building to at least accommodate those individuals there. And we heard the naysayers saying what was going to happen if we decided to do that regarding the relocation of Shenley to the Reisenstein building, that blood would be running through the streets of East Liberty and that folks would be fighting. And we heard that when we were closing schools in Homewood as far as where people had to walk. But that's neither here nor there, whether, you know, you hear things on the front end, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully it won't. But again, it's a learning experience that those are things that we need to attend to regarding any sale of buildings, closing of buildings, realignment of schools, etc. So as we can improve our business, our deliberations in terms of knowing better how to involve the community, how to engage the community, it comes under community engagement. And we're saying that's one of our goals, one of our beliefs and commitments, that we want to improve community engagement within the school district. This is one aspect of where improvement is needed, improvement going forward we can make and we can learn. But again, I really take exception to the fact that if this board is recorded as approving everything that has been done over the last, since my tenure on this board, 6 years, that if we approved it, we condone what happened. We weren't testing the waters. We weren't necessarily taking chances or risks. We had trust within the administration that the right things are being done. So if we do see pockets of excellence, if we do see greater achievement, if we do see improvement within the district, if we do see folks coming back to our schools, if we do see folks being picked up at the airports and the comments are made about how good the Pittsburgh public school system is, that's what we're here for. And we won't see those kind of things overnight. It won't come soon. Some of us may see it 10, 20 years from now because of the decisions we're making here tonight. Because of the decisions that were made 20 and 30 years ago, you can ride around certain communities and see the effect of those decisions that still exist. So again, let's take to heart our important task. Let's do the right things for the kids of the city of Pittsburgh, and hopefully the byproduct will improve the city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shealy?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Mr. Camardo, this falls a little before my time, but I believe the board approved a healthy school bus policy, that school buses needed to meet emission standards.
It's in the current contract, and it's retrofitting the buses.
So C10, or my B10, I'm sorry, I'm under B10. This is a contract to enter in with a local bus carrier.
It's adding a carrier within the current contract, and they would abide by that same contract.
I'm sorry, so wait, we already are under contract with them? No.
It's another carrier, and I think it dealt with a change in ownership within the carrier.
Okay. Let me get my question out, and then maybe you can help. I just want to know, do they meet the policy?
They have to meet the policy by the contract they're going to sign. If they don't meet it, they don't transport children.
Thank you. That suffices. And I guess to some comments that were made earlier, there was a characterization that I don't necessarily agree with, to Ms. Khaleesi's point about us as members being able to make statements, and it was with regard to the failing East End schools, and I think that characterization is unfair. We have tremendous issues at Westinghouse, and the administration has devoted a lot of time and attention to that, but Westinghouse is not the only school on the East End. If I might name Obama, Linden, Starrett, Faison, and Lincoln, Homewood Early Childhood Care Center, Dilworth, and Fulton are all really good schools that live in the East End. And that, I'm not sure if I named them both, but two of my children, my children attend two schools on the East End, and as a parent, I'm very happy. So just that characterization about bad schools on the East End just didn't feel fair to me, particularly as the representative of a lot of the East End schools. So thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, what buildings do we have that are currently vacant but not up for sale?
I didn't bring my roster with me, but Prospect is vacant, but it's under option agreement. Miller will close by the end of the year. Connolly has been sold. And I think the bulk of them were up for sale under C3 and did not get a lot of response. So that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you. So would it be safe to say that a community where any of our vacant buildings are other than Conley, Prospect, and Miller, the community should take a proactive stance and try to look for ways to get the building reused in a purpose that is suitable to that neighborhood?
I would say you're right, and in some of the communities that's been done, but the efforts have not been successful to date, I think due in part to the economic times we live in right now. That sort of capital is scarce, but we hope as things get better, there may be more interest.
But if they do take a proactive interest at this point, it might save us time later when people react when the buildings go up for sale.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Allen?
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Weiss, when you said the Miller, that Miller is closing, you mean the Miller building, not Miller School, where it's currently located?
The Miller building the transaction will close by the end of the year. The board approved that sale some time ago. So thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Yes, I want to first, before I put the motion on the floor, I do want to point out the fact that I had a brief conversation with the director of the Light of Life mission, who was the candidate or the agency that was recommended by the administration to receive the Ridge Avenue. And I had a brief conversation with him in the hallway, and I had to remind him that I am a supporter of the mission of the Light of Life mission. As a youngster, I attended church there. I participated in the food distribution program. I was a volunteer there, and also I did one summer as a summer worker there. My family is committed. My family is a part of that building on North Avenue. I don't believe that there's a room that we haven't been in the building in terms as a family attending church and other activities. So I only say that to make it very clear so that the attempt to draw lines between folks not supporting the mission of the Light of Life mission would just simply be false. I am a supporter, will continue to support them. The reason for making this resolution is to try to get something out of it for our children because of the wonderful location. Secondly, it was made here, comments made by one of my colleagues concerning misinformation and not giving accurate numbers and so on, and I agree with my colleagues. So I am going to direct Dr. Lane. I would like for you to provide for me the exact numbers for the last 5 years of the dollars that were spent from the communications and marketing, and I would like to have a breakout of the different contractors and the amount of dollars that each contractor provided. I'd like to, at this time,
Excuse me, Mr. Brentley, I
Yes.
believe that was supplied to us about 2 months ago at your request. So it would be in our paperwork already.
Well, I am asking for additional information because I need to know, as it was mentioned by one of my colleagues in terms of the actual numbers, and I also need to see.
Given that. You had asked for it, and we
Okay.
were given the details.
Let me put my request in, and then let the administration provide, if possible. And also, I would like to see the list of the contractors or service providers and what dollar amount they received over the last 5 years. I'd like to make the motion for this resolution for C10. And this is a motion to simply reject the motion and then to, well, I'll do it in 2 phases. I'll do the rejection of this motion first, and then the second one I'd like to do as to be appointed as the chair to talk about the highest and best use for that particular building with the community college and any other agency interested. So that is a motion that I'm putting forward on the floor.
Mr. Brentley, you wouldn't need to make a motion to reject it. We would simply do that by our vote.
Well, but
Our
I'm
vote going
asking
through.
to reject it, to have it removed, so that we're not voting on this item before us.
Well, it's part of the report. I mean, the report you have on C2 is to award the bid to Light of Life Mission. Those who wish to not have that happen should vote no on C2. I think the motion Mr. Brentley is making is repetitive, and I would suggest that the board consider the report, and if the members are inclined, those members who are inclined not to support the sale of Ridge to Light of Life Mission should simply vote no. I think the motion to reject is repetitive and could tend to confuse the report, so I would recommend that the board you not consider that.
Well, Mr. Weiss, here's a reason for that. I don't want it to be a splitting issue with someone having to say yes or no for this particular item. And because of the wonderful works of this mission, it can be viewed that way. My attempt to put a motion on the floor to simply have it removed before us would avoid that. And so there is a difference.
Having it removed, in effect, rejects the bid. So that, I'm suggesting to the board, you have it before you in organized fashion. If it's your desire to not award the bid to Light of Life for whatever reason, that you indicate a no vote on C2.
Well, you know, I'm not going to argue. I totally disagree with that, Mr. Weiss. I mean, as a board member, we should have that right of simply having an item removed. That's the person. Oh, no, I'm not going to argue with the solicitor over this. Fine, we'll just move forward with it. You cannot continue to take the rights of voting board members here. Fine, we'll move forward with it.
Further, Dr. Lane, wait a minute. Go ahead, Dr. Lane.
I just wanted to offer some clarification around the consulting fees for Department of Communications, which on face looks like Department of Communications has just this hefty budget, which is not the case. What really happens here is that if a school or a department needs design work done, they ask Department of Communications to do that, and then they pay out of their budgets to cover the cost of that particular design work. And in addition to that, I think we did provide some information to the board in this regard fairly recently to indicate, and I don't know if Ms. Fischetti can come up with the number, I can't pull it out of my head right now. A good portion of these costs are actually supported by grant funds, so 75%. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter.
One question on point of order, Mr. Weiss, on the resolution involving the remainder of the buildings where it's recommending that the bids be rejected. That's an up or down vote on all of those buildings?
Well, that's the way the resolution is drafted. If a board member wishes to vote no on the resolution on a particular school, they can do that. And then assuming if at the end of that voting process, one of those results in that bid not being rejected, then we'll have to deal with what we do with the bid. But, so I guess what I'm telling you is you can vote, the board members can vote yes, but register a no vote on a particular building. It's not an all up or down vote.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to put forth a motion concerning items 4, 5, and 6 that they only be for 1 year with the possibility for 1-year options for renewal on each of those.
I'll second it.
Okay, Sumter and Ware Allen. Questions on the motion? Mrs. Khaleesi. Okay, Mr. Weiss, will you take, this is to vote on the motion to limit numbers 4, 5, and 6 to 1-year terms with 1-year option to renew. Is that what you said? You do have a question? Go ahead.
Now, that would mean that at the end of the year, they would have to come back before the process. Okay. That would also mean that they can still run the tab up, not to exceed the 150 and the 210,000. That's why I'm asking the sponsor. Does your motion address any of that?
The motion as stated does not address that. However, I'm trying to think how to address that in the sense that how many items would come up that would run it up that high in a 1-year time frame as opposed to a 2-year, as opposed to a 3-year. If it were to be addressed, it would be to have that same motion and 1-year option. The 1 year, the first year would only be able to spend 1/3 of that money, or one quarter of that money in the first year. But I don't want to limit it to, you might need a little more that year, may need a little less, but then they still would have to come before us for approval to go over.
Well, listen, I appreciate your intentions. I don't think it goes far enough. I won't be.
I understand what you're saying.
But we need to stop the bleeding. It's been bleeding for 5 or more years.
At this point, I'll
I
just keep it as is, but I take that as.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with Mr. Sumter's motion that he's put forth, does it mean that the contractors would have to submit to reply to an RFP every 2 years?
They would have to come back on a yearly basis. After 1 year, they would have to come back to us for renewal.
So renewal doesn't necessarily mean an RFP process. So that's why I'm asking, if they have a 1-year renewal, then we have the option to give them a renewal, and then at the end of the 2-year period, then does that mean that they would have to reapply, and we would have to circulate an RFP again?
Does anybody else see it that way? I was just thinking a 1-year renewal just coming to us to be renewed if they were to on a yearly basis. Annual renewal.
Well, if it's an option to renew, that is not a new RFP. It's an option to renew their services for another year under the terms of the agreement. There would not be a new RFP. If it were a new RFP, it will be a 1-year contract, period. So that's the difference.
The intent was thinking, based on what was done in that year, we could judge whether to renew it or not, and if we didn't, then an RFP would go out for new consultants, or the decision not to have consultants at that point.
But what happens after the renewal period? You mean it's only saying 1 renewal period of a year?
No, the intent was that you have a 1-year contract. They wanted to go for 4 years, that each year they would come back for approval of renewing that contract on an annual basis, that contract would be renewed on an annual basis.
But I guess my concern is that the RFP allows them to solicit bids from other folks. So if it just is on an annual basis, the same contractor can be a contractor with us in perpetuity, as opposed to soliciting new bids at the end of the 4-year period.
True. And I was looking at it just as a control factor. And I'm looking at it as a control factor, not to give out a 4-year contract as opposed to 1-year approved on a 1-year basis. But I see what you're saying, that 1 year with a 1-year renewal and then a new RFP for all of that, or that's if we're satisfied with what they've done and we renew it on an annual basis, then we would save money by not having to do a new RFP in that sense. So I'm keeping it as the same, as just renewal on an annual basis. Because if this motion were not put forward and we voted on it, we would be giving them almost 4-year contracts with no. You would a 1 year and then a approval of a 3-year.
Let
That was what the option was.
me ask a question here, because I think we need some clarity. The motion as you expressed it is a 1-year, basically a 2-year agreement, 1 year and 1-year renewal at our option. What I'm hearing now is that it's a 4-year agreement, but it's a 1 year and then there's 3 renewals within it. Is that what you're saying? The question is, how many renewals?
I was looking for a renewal on an annual basis. Approval of a renewal on an annual basis.
So how many of those are there? I mean,
as it's stated here, it'd be 1 year with 3 renewals.
So is it your goal to have this work that each year it comes to the board for approval?
Okay, then my motion would be a 1-year contract with a 1-year option. That's what I would really prefer.
Years.
Yes.
That's what the motion was originally when Mr. Sumter made it.
Okay, I'll stick with that then.
Okay, Mrs. Khaleesi.
May I please have some clarification on this contract, or all 3 contracts, am I correct? If I'm correct remembering agenda review, it was a 1-year contract with 3-year optional renewal, but that option had to still come in front of this board. Am I correct? I'm not disputing that, Mr. Eisler. I'm
Mrs.
recalling
Khaleesi.
agenda review.
Ms. Lisa Fischetti. The way this was bid was so that we would not have to go out and do an RFP again until the term was up. So that means that the board would be authorizing us for the entire term for that up to not to exceed amount for the entire term. The option to renew on an annual basis, you as a board would be authorizing the administration to exercise that option without coming back to the board for approval. So it would be based on the administration's desire whether or not to continue to use that contract. In fact, back in 2008, you did approve a contract like this, and we did not use that firm for all 4 years. We did not come back to you and say we weren't going to use it. We did not come back to you and tell you we did not go to the not to exceed amount. We just didn't use the firm because we were not satisfied with the firm. So what the board is authorizing is that we do not have to bring this back to the board again for another RFP for the entire term that is listed. The way the bid went out for RFP, the way the RFP was done, providers and vendors knew that their price was based on the fact that they would be able to keep people employed for a period of time if they did good work and their quality met our expectations. So the pricing that was involved in the bid is based on a multi-year contract.
Okay, so that would have been my concern. If they were coming back every year, yeah. Okay, I'm just...
After hearing the discussion at the table, I'll withdraw the motion.
Withdraw my second.
Mr. Eisler, do you still want to comment?
Thank you.
All right, let's have a roll call
This is a
vote.
vote on the business item again.
I'm sorry. You won't have to deal with me after this.
I was just going to say, just because this is your last night.
For item C3A, regarding the recommendation to reject the bids for Belmar, Madison, Mann, and Morningside, if the bids are, and Shenley, if the bids are rejected, would they have the opportunity to apply again?
Well, if the bids are rejected, the board will have to, there'll be a discussion with the board how we proceed at that point. So yes, people can rebid, but we're going to have to come up with the process the board wants to use.
And just for, so the public is aware, as I was informed, because I had concern about this one, is that for some of these bids, we would actually end up owing money
Would not,
beyond what they're offering.
it would not cover the
The full
debt on the building, correct?
Thank you.
Right.
But we wouldn't have to defease, and there's comments made that some may not have been able to hear, but it was except for a nonprofit, and we would not have to defease those bonds if we sold to a nonprofit.
If it's sold to a nonprofit, you don't have to defease them, which means you don't have to pay off those bonds, but the money has to either be used for debt service generally or capital projects. All of these bid documents specified that a bid covering the existing debt was preferred. And all of the ones that are being rejected did not meet that threshold. Okay, this is the business agenda. Dr. Allen.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on C1 and 2.
Mr. Bentley?
Yes on the report. I'll be voting no on B2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'll also be voting no on the public asset giveaway C1, and I'll be voting no on C2, Ridge Avenue, and I'll be voting no on C4.
You're voting yes on C3?
Yeah.
Want to make sure. Mrs. Khaleesi.
Yes.
Mrs. Fink.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on C2.
Mr. Eisler.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on C2A. Specific, that's how it's labeled in the book.
Mr. McCray.
Yes.
Ms. Shealy.
I'm sorry, can I get a point of order on Mr. Eisler's vote? I don't understand what he meant by C2A.
Same, what I wanted to be very specific with the solicitor in the vote is I'm voting on the resolution that is appear as item number C2A, as appears as a resolution, Ms. Shealy. Okay?
Thank you.
You see it up there?
Thank you.
Yes,
I was a few
thank you.
pages behind you. Thank you. No, I was just making. So with that, yes.
Voting yes. Sumter.
Yes on the report as a whole, no on items B, 4, 5, and 6.
Mr. Zeta.
Yes.
Okay, as I review this here, This report's approved. C2 received 5 yes and 4 no votes. Is that what everybody has here? It's like booth review at the football game. Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's now move on to the report on personnel that includes addendums A and B that are before you. Are there any questions on the personnel report at this time? Dr. Allen.
I just want to congratulate and welcome Evelyn Newsom in Addendum B, who will be the secretary to Dr. Lane. I had the privilege of working with her sister as my assistant for a number of years.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley.
I am going to be respectfully voting no for number 2, and I have to take a second to explain that. With all of the somewhat mid-year changes with principals and shifting, which is a terrible thing to do once the school starts, you lose consistency in other schools. And one of the things that's happening here is the shifting or the moving of number 2, who is assistant principal at Allegheny Middle School, loved by all the students and a perfect fit with the principal there under the leadership of Tony Kendricks. I've never seen a couple work together so well. And so as a respectful thing of losing Mr. Vallada from the school, I will respectfully voting no, but on the flip side of that, I'm wishing him well. But we miss him. Students will miss him in front of the school every day, organizing and knowing all the students by name and having a wonderful working relationship with the principal there, Tony Kendrick. So I will be respectfully voting no and giving him a
Mr. Brentley, for clarification, is that addendum B, C?
That is addendum B, C2.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Fink? Mr. Eisler?
Thank you, Mrs. Suda.
Mr. McCray?
I just want to recognize and thank our employees that are in the military for doing a very good job. Thank you.
Mr. Sumter?
No comment.
Ms. Shealy? Mr. Weiss, could we have a roll call vote, please?
So on the Human Resources report, Dr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Brentley?
Yes, and a respectful good luck in the future no to number C2, our good friend, Mr. Anthony Vallada.
Mrs. Khaleesi? I'm sorry, I didn't see her. Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy? Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Zuda?
Yes.
Report's approved. I will get Mrs. Khaleesi's vote when she returns.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. If you would, I'd like to call the board's attention to the financial statement dated October 31st, 2011. Does anyone have any comments, Mr. Eisler?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I feel like Mr. McCray on a Human Resources report. Mr. Camarda, on the key financial indicators, which again I commend you on preparing every single month, the general fund expenditures, knowing that this is October 31st, we have 2 months to go in this fiscal year. Is there any, are you thinking that we are going to be over budget, or that the expenditures are going to be in line as budgeted by December 31st?
The expenditures are on track to be as projected for the end of December.
So we will balance as expected.
We will be in the range we projected.
Thank you, sir, which means we'll be under, Mr. Camarda. I'm looking forward to it, Mr. Camarda. Thank you, Mrs. Suda.
Thank you. We'll move on to new business. Oh, go ahead, wait a minute, Mr. Weiss.
Yes.
So that's approved 9-0 except C2, which is 8-1. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, I do need to abstain on an item. If you give me a second, please.
All right. Is there an abstention here?
Yes,
1 second, please.
yeah.
Number 18, page 18, item 3. Thank you.
The minutes will so note. Thank you.
All right, going right. This is an interesting evening. There was one new business item before us this evening to accept Dr. Lane's performance priorities for 2011-12. They've been a long time coming. The board and Dr. Lane have both put a lot of time and effort into establishing the priorities for 2011-12. And so I would like to ask Mrs. Fink to read the resolution at this time.
Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the board hereby approves the following performance priorities for Superintendent Linda Lane for 2011-12. Number 1, improve support for and communication with principals. Number 2, oversee effective fiscal planning and implementation of a process that results in a budget for 2012 which meets the minimum reserve levels per the board's policy. Number 3, continue implementation of Empowering Effective Teachers Plan to A, assure effective teachers are placed in career ladder roles for 2012-13, B, bring together multiple measures to contribute to a teacher's overall rating starting in 2012-13, C, roll out value-added measures, VAMs, for fall 2011 and develop and communicate VAMs usage by June 2012. D, provide report of how STAR, meaning Students and Teachers Achieving Results Program, has been utilized as a means to motivate staff to increase school performance during 2011-12. And E, introduce first portal version for district staff to access information to increase effectiveness. Item number 4, develop and communicate a plan to decrease racial disparities in student achievement within district schools by April 2012. Number 5, show progress on a majority of the 42 testing points of the PSSA. 6, reevaluate and refine the career and technology education plan in light of the district realignment plan as adopted by the board. Number 7, continue emphasis on high school reform with a focus on the following. A, transition Pittsburgh Langley students into Pittsburgh-Brashear for 2012-13. Transition Pittsburgh Oliver students into Pittsburgh Perry for 2012-13. And restart Pittsburgh Westinghouse for 2012-13. Thank you, that's it.
Khaleesi and McCray, are there any questions on the motion? Dr. Allen. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I will be abstaining from this motion. I believe during these hard times, we need clear measurables as to the progress that this district needs. When we can use words like roll out, continue, oversee, improve, reevaluate, it's very, very difficult to measure. And so I will abstain. And I felt that way over the last 6 years on the process used to identify its goals. And I think we need a little more for this district. So I will be abstaining on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Mrs. Fink. Mr. Eisler.
Yes, I think this process, and again, I know we do this every year, went very smoothly this year, Mrs. Zuda, and I, thank you for that. And Mr. Sumter, who usually takes it to write this, but I know there was a lot of comments back and forth in the emails, and I just think that we did a good job of putting this together. It is a pleasure to be working with Dr. Lane. I hear incredibly positive statements about her leadership with this district. I'm a little disappointed, but I think it should be noted publicly that you have declined an increase this year for the money that you should have been given because you met your performances. There's a lot of comments in the Commonwealth 2 years. Both. I understand that. I'm saying that I want to be clear in that. There's a lot of comments in the Pennsylvania newspapers about superintendents taking increases. You're one who did not. I think that sacrifice should be noted, and I do appreciate it. But I again feel strongly that the amount of time that you put in this district is stunning, and the work you do is on behalf of the students and the parents is phenomenal. It's a pleasure to be sitting at the table with you, and I thank my fellow colleagues for working on these goals. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. McCray.
I think Mr. Eisler covered it very well.
Mr. Sumter.
Just clarification, last meeting it was voted on to give the increase, and just to know on record that Dr. Lane's non-acceptance of that makes it official.
Lane has declined it and has so informed the appropriate officers in the district. Her salary remains as it was before the board action.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lane. You're to be commended for that.
Ms. Shealy. Before we take the vote, I would just like to comment that I'm a little disheartened that there were so many hours and hours put into this, and that, Mr. Brentley, you chose not to participate at all, and then to withhold your support of the work done by your 8 colleagues is very disrespectful of our work as a whole. I hope you will reconsider and participate in the process next year so perhaps it could meet what your desires. Thank you.
Just like to respond to that. I've shared many times over the last 6 years, actually, I think prior before you arrived on this board, the process has not been one that's been open. The process has been one that it's almost has been prescribed before we get there on what the outcome of what the evaluations are going to be. I've said them publicly, and I've said them as well as in executive session. Thirdly, the most important reason is that there is no need to walk into additional conflict when you don't have to. I get enough of it here, right at this table and any other meetings where I happen to have a difference of opinion. My same or those same colleagues you refer to, I have not been given just a basic right that others have been given. And to attend a meeting to determine or to hash out the evaluation and the evaluation tool for the superintendent with having a difference of opinion could get bloody, because there are some here who are hell-bent on putting forward the positive things regardless and not accurately and honestly evaluating what's happening in the district. And so it continues to be that. And so there's no need for me to overextend myself when the welcome is simply not there on behalf. It's a wonderful thing to say what you've just said, but in executive session, it is always much more of a different situation. So I appreciate the invitation. I still believe the process is tainted, that as long as certain individuals continue to have a heavy hand in this process, we'll never be able to accurately and honestly and to be able to critically analyze what's going on in this district. There will always be the spin of pushing certain things forward. I'm not interested in that. I want the brutal honesty. I want to be able to learn and to grow, and somewhere somebody's got to be honest and sharing with that. It is not what we see in the local newspapers in terms of the conditions of what's happening in this district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd just like to clarify that in executive session, much as the votes went tonight, that there was a lot of divergence of opinion. That is actually what happens at executive session. For the most part, it's done respectfully, And I have to say, you're the only person on this board who has ever insulted me personally. And so I feel for you. Mr. Weisskleet,
Miss,
what? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I can understand your comments now because they appear to be personal. I have been professional here, even having my microphones cut off, conversations taking place, personal cell phone removed, not given the proper opportunity to present my items, not having any, if very few of my items ever second, just to have it presented to the floor. I think I've handled myself pretty well. And there is no record anywhere of me ever cussing, cursing, pointing my fingers, or getting angry to hit, hurt, or harm anyone, even though some around this table have actually moved to that level. I've never raised my voice to shut a person off from speaking at a meeting like some chairs have done here. We don't want to hear you, just keep quiet. I've never, ever done that. So unfortunately, yours is personal, and that's your call. You're the chair. But I've stated clearly what my position. I've said it again, and somewhere we have to find a way to open this up to everyone. Yes, there are some difference of opinions. Yes, there are some who are asking for other information, and we should welcome that and not turn it into anything personal, but it's your call.
I could respond, but then we'd go back and forth all night. That's not good use of anyone's time. So, Mr. Weiss.
This is on the item of new business. Dr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Brentley?
Abstain.
Mrs. Clazy?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy? Yes. Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
It's approved 801.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Are there any other items to be brought before the board at this time that require board approval? Mr. Brenton.
Yes, I want to put a quick motion on the floor to have the word Pittsburgh removed from all of the names within the district. It's getting a bit silly, and I just think we need to make a motion to do so, and I want to put something on the floor so that we can just do the right thing. It doesn't make sense. We know why it was there, but that is a motion.
Brentley and Shealy. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Khaleesi.
I'm afraid that I will not be able to support this motion. It is probably the third or fourth time now that this motion has been brought to the table. We've had discussion over it. No, it is not. However, I would rather, regardless, we've had this discussion on the fly. What I would like, if Mr. Brentley is serious about having that conversation, is to put it through committee, which it would go through business committee, I would imagine, or it could go through communications and marketing, whichever the chair prefers. But if we're going to have that sort of a discussion, I don't want to make a decision like that right here, last minute, last second, when we've already been here for 2.5 hours. I would prefer it go through committee. So I would ask Mr. Brentley to please withdraw his motion and put it through a committee.
No, I do want to clarify, this is the first time that it was presented for a vote for consideration. There were many times it was raised and discussed, but never before this body for a vote consideration.
Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Sumter.
The only merit I can see is that the identity of our schools outside of the city, for people around the world to know who we are, where we're from, or where those schools are located. It may help in that sense. I know in state playoffs, in athletics, you hear there's many Central Catholics, but when you say Pittsburgh Central Catholic, you know exactly which one you're talking about. So I think that same identity could be extended to our schools also. But I mean, of all the big things we've talked about this evening, let's move on.
Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Brentley.
I just want to give the main reason for this is that There are reasons why buildings have names, and it is for history of this region. It is to bring up that person's name or his or her spirit, or to remind us of their accomplishments. Perfect examples would be Malines. And, you know, not only do you have Pittsburgh in front, but you have Pittsburgh University Preparatory School at Margaret Malines. No, no, no. We want to say her name first. Van School, these individuals make contributions to the city, and the list just goes on as to the history of it. We do not need to throw Pittsburgh in front of or to take the light away from the rich history that some of these names bring to some of these buildings. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
No.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
No.
Mr. McCray?
No.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
No at this time.
Mrs. Azuda?
No.
The motion is defeated, 3-6.
Any other items for board action? Dr. Lane?
Actually, board, it's not board action in the usual sense, but I just had to let the board know that I have here a contribution from one of our students. This is from Robbie Cooper in room 102 at Minadeo, who wants to help with kids in transition that he's been reading about, and he sent us $1.11 to help out. So I just have to thank Robbie.
Thank you. Any other items that do not need board approval or any announcements? Dr. Allen? Mr. Brentley?
Yes, I have a couple announcements. I just want to suggest to you, Dr. Lane, and the administration that I think it's worth a second look at our sex ed program. And the reason why I raised that is that if you're looking in the news of all of this issue, the information with Penn State and so on, we need to reevaluate it and see if there's any issues or topics in our sex ed that would do a couple of things: make it uncomfortable to talk about, or it might create an atmosphere that could create a similar atmosphere. And so I'm asking that we find a way, or put it on the education committee, to bring it up and to talk about it. I know of staff, I know of parents who've raised concerns about certain sections and how do you handle that kind of discussion with young kids. And so I think that is something that we need to consider. Second, I want to just ask too, Dr. Lane, I had made a request about information concerning discussions about bankruptcy, and I did not receive anything, have not heard anything, and I'd really like to know any and all communications, or what discussions, or how extensive have those discussions been. And I also want to remind the administration that is really something that should not take place without full board involvement. And the final comment I just want to remind folks concerning is the article that was in last week's local paper concerning the situation at Westinghouse. I've shared with you, Doctor, in private as well as an agenda review, and I'll say it here this evening, that there are some recommendations for disciplinary actions for some staff, and I am one board member who believes that that should not happen to any staff. Westinghouse is a problem that we caused as a board, and the administration, and not taking our time and not putting the right things and the right things in place. And so if and when anything is presented before me, I will not be supporting it, and I'm asking that you not even bring anything forward. This requires someone to go in there and to really reevaluate what happened and what went wrong. And in all fairness to you, Dr. Lane, that is nothing really that we can place at your foot. That was the previous administration and their willingness to force things through without thinking about them. The final thing I just wanted to present is no other school is going through what this particular community has gone through. I have here 40 citations. 40 citations since the beginning of the school year. That is unacceptable. Disorderly conduct, fighting, etc., etc. You cannot blame children. Yes, you can. You cannot blame children for some of the problems that we've had. It's not read in the public, it's there. It's public information. You can make the request to the local magistrate's office.
I would urge Mr. Brentley to be prudent in his discussion here. These are minors, so you're not doing these children any favor by bringing this up.
I understand that, Mr. Weiss. That's why it's a packet here. That I'm encouraging the board that we have to find a way to get in there to resolve Westinghouse. You don't allow this to go on, and we have to do what we have to do to make it happen and to make it safe for all children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wait. I need to respond to two of Mr. Brentley's. Just for clarification, Dr. Lane did respond on your request for information on, what was your second thing? Oh, bankruptcy. She did respond to us twice on that. She responded initially, and then she gave us, she provided additional information. So if you want to check your faxes and/or your emails.
You talk about the memo. He referred to Mr. Weiss.
No.
The memo explained the nature of any discussions. It was with me, and the memo said there had been no other discussions by Dr. Lane or me. That's what it said.
That's good information, and
Part of the discussion speaking of discipline tonight was centered around the concerns of Westinghouse, and I don't want to say any more, but we were discussing it tonight.
I would urge the board to be very prudent in discussing student discipline or any legal proceedings in the schools. That is really not appropriate for a public forum.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. I apologize. Well, no, we have to go around the table. No, we're on announcements. Do you have any announcements? Mrs. Fink, Mr. Eisler. Go ahead, Tom. Mr. Sumter, sorry.
Guy sitting next. I just want to say that this Saturday, the Pittsburgh City League Football Championship was held at Couple Stadium. Two great teams, Pittsburgh Allderdice, and it was really interesting. Sometimes they were Obama, sometimes they were USO, sometimes they were University Preparatory School at Margaret Malines, sometimes they were UPrep, sometimes they were the Eagles, sometimes they were the Panthers. I hear they're actually the Wildcats. But this is what happens when you have three or four schools put together to make one team. It's University Preparatory School at Margaret Malines, Pittsburgh Science and Technology Academy, and Barack Obama International Studies Academy that make up the USO. This is their first year of competition, first year of coming together. They talked about how they had to overcome all the egos of the different young men coming together from different parts of the city, different schools, and collectively they put together a very outstanding football season. I believe they were 11-1 with 8 shutouts. They played teams in Ohio. They're looking forward to going into the state playoffs. They'll be playing in Johnstown, PA. They'll be playing against, I'm not sure, I can't remember. Altoona. The game's in Altoona. And I can't recall the team they're going to be playing, but they're really looking forward to making impact on the state. And if they do get a win in the state playoffs, that'll be good. But they did win the championship, and it was an exciting game because it was 0-0, 0-0 until about 8 minutes left in the game. And the one young man that UPrep, University Preparatory School at Margaret Malines, USO, they finally scored. So it was 6-0 with about 3 or 4 minutes left. And then finally, they got the ball back, and a young man broke off a run from the 9-yard line and went 91 yards for a touchdown. And it was an exciting ending to a game, but congratulations to Pittsburgh USO, the guys of UPrep, Obama, and SciTech coming together, forming that team, and it was their first year of competition. They're the City League champions. Congratulations.
Thank you, Miss. Yay. Miss Shealy.
Dr. Lane, can you speak to, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but well, apparently I'm going to do it anyway. The things that, the changes that have been instituted at Westinghouse in the past 4 to 6 weeks that address the concern, some of the concerns that out of that building.
Yes, I can. What the major changes, of course, are involved in, we had 2 issues we had to address. One was our action we took and ask you to approve regarding single gender classes, and so that is a change. Another change is addressing the, we did make a change to a standard schedule rather than the trimester schedule. We did change leadership at Pittsburgh Westinghouse, and the agreement that in discussing it with folks coming in, as well as Dr. Talaferro, who had already gone in to assist, was that we would have a 2-week period of just assessment as to where things are, what we thought the major issues were, and how we were going to address them. And then we would meet after that 2-week period and prioritize the things that we believe needed to be done. Progress, I know Dr. Atua is there fairly regularly. I myself have been to Westinghouse, I think, 4 times this year, which is more than any other school in the city. We did have a meeting. We are planning to meet with Homewood Children's Village to make sure that we're all on the same page as to who's doing what. One of the concerns we have is around roles and responsibilities, because there are a lot of extra adults in Westinghouse, and we have to make sure that everyone's clear on what their roles and responsibilities are. So we knew that that was one of the things that had to happen. The last time I was there I'll be the first to admit we've had real struggles at Westinghouse this year, but the last time I was there, some of our middle school young ladies were coming back from seeing a play, and they were so excited. They had enjoyed it. It was related to, I think, some of the reading they'd been doing in English language arts, and they actually got to see the play performed. And they were talking to me about, how great that was. Another opportunity I had there, and just to remind all of us that not all is negative at Westinghouse. We had 4 of our seniors, also young women, who are all promise ready, and one of them was a 4.0. And I got the opportunity. I told them I wanted my picture with them, and so we got a picture taken together. So we do have a lot of attention on it. I've told this board that I plan to give it personal attention because we have to make it right. We truly have to make it right. So I will be keeping the board up to date on any recommended actions we believe need to be taken. We got a suggestion last night to have a meeting in the community. I think that's a good idea. So I had conversation with Tim Stevens about when we might be able to do that just today. We'll be, using part of our education committee time or the board update to keep the board apprised as to progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. I'm done, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank, go ahead, Skip.
I did forget something. On November 29th is the budget, the public hearing at noon for the budget. So if anybody's interested in talking about the budget hearing, come on out.
Thank you. That was very important. Okay. I want to take a minute to thank Franco Harris for all the work he has done for the children in our district. I respect him very much for the work he has done, and this past month has bewildered me in that loyalty has now become a chargeable offense. I just don't understand that. And so I just want to take a moment to thank him for everything he has done. Just been an excellent public spokesperson for the children in our district who now have the opportunity to go to college. No, motion to adjourn. No, Khaleesi and Shealy. Shealy, Khaleesi, either way. Adjourn. Give us a minute and we'll switch over to Mount Oliver I was asking. No. We'll move over to Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Are you okay? Let's do it. All right, I'd like to call the November 22nd, 2011 meeting of the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit to order. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Allen?
Present.
Bradley? Here. Swayze?
I'm here.
Spink?
Here.
Rice has stepped out. Mr. McCray?
Here.
Ms. Shealy?
Here.
Sumter?
Present.
Mrs. Zudek?
Will board members please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Motion. Khaleesi. Sumter. All those in favor? Okay, we've just accepted the minutes of October 22nd, 2011 legislative meeting. Go to the Committee on Education. This is a report submitted to us by Dr. Allen Chair and her committee. Are there any questions that were not addressed at agenda review? Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Brentley? Yes. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Zudek?
Yes.
Approved 8-0.
Thank you. Let's move to the committee report on business that is before us, submitted by Mr. McCray, Chair, and his committee. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
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 Report's approved.
Thank you. Are there any other items to be brought before the board? Oh, there is no personnel report for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit this evening. Are there any other items to be brought before the board?
Second.
Khaleesi, Shealy, and before we adjourn, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and invite everyone to stay and have a slice of cake with Dr. Allen and have a moment to speak with you. Well, that would be all right, too. Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.